So first of all, let me be the first to welcome you. My name is Ed Potasnik, and I am a council member here in Franklin Township on the lower half of the town, Ward 1. I'm pleased to see so many of you here today for an information session about the Williams Transco proposal, the latest, to build what they call the Northeast Supply Enhancement Project, which is not only dangerous and unneeded and very expensive, with New York ratepayers paying for gas they don't need, but it's also wrong for our community. And we'll talk about a number of different things about the project so you all can become educated. One of the first things we want to do is just to show folks how to have their voice be heard in the process that is currently open through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that is to sign up as an intervener, which gives you legal authority under FERC rules to not only comment, but also challenge rulings by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and then also how to comment. And those are two sort of separate processes. Barbara Cuthbert is going to share a little bit about how to do that. You all should have received an information sheet. It's two-sided. One is how to just comment and how to intervene. And then the other side also has instructions about how to do it with, I guess, an attachment. And then we're going to hear from Patty Kronheim from Rethink Energy, and Michelle from New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, who's an attorney. I'm very familiar with the project over the years. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So that's kind of the run of show. Patty has a little bit of a foot injury, so we're going to be doing it from the seated position. So don't worry too much, and feel free to get to know some folks. So I'm going to hand it over to Barbara to get started. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. Our voices have been raised previously in opposition to this project for the harm that it would bring to our communities, the families that it would hurt. And each time, folks said that it was going to be impossible to fight and stop, that corporate greed and profits were inherently more important than people and their lives. And every single time thus far, we have been able to stop this unnecessary project from moving forward. And we are hopeful that with your help, we'll be able to do that again. So I'm going to move this a little closer and plug in this computer. And hopefully, you will see a projection of the website. Ta-da! Awesome. So Barbara's going to walk through, and she's an awesome ally, an assistant in all of this work. If you're interested in signing up as an intervener today, we have some laptops and people to help you with the process, and that'll be happening in the back, and you can do that anytime during the presentations or when we finish up today. So let's welcome Barbara.
Thank you. Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me. I just got cataract surgery and I need to still use reading glasses. So if I look fuzzy, that's what it's all about.
Just make sure you're really loud. Can you guys hear?
Oh, can you guys hear me? That's better,
Okay.
right? Okay, sorry about that. What you see on the screen is FERC's home webpage. And if you want to intervene, I'm going to show you on FERC's thing, and then I'll show you, or I'll tell you about an easier one. If you go down the left column, there's something that says FERC Online. You just click that. Then you go over to the right column, and it says e-filing, and you click that. Uh-oh. How do you make it bigger? Can I make it bigger? I'm sorry. This is also a Mac, and I'm not used to. Of course.
Why is that minuscule? Oh, the window popped up, yeah. Wait, what is this? Better?
It's there, right? Can you guys see that? And there's two things you can do. Has anybody registered with FERC before? Just put your hands up. Okay, and who has not? Like half and half. All right, so I'm going to do the one if you've registered. If not, you actually have to register. I'm sorry about the microphone. So what you do is you log in if you're already registered. Oh, write to me. I don't remember what mine is though. Oh, I can just like click it?
Yeah, see my fingerprint.
Okay. And then your email should pop up. And then you go to the next page that says FERC online applications. How come it doesn't go down? Uh-oh.
I didn't bring my mouse.
One of these three now. I'm looking for, intervene.
So when you,
Oh, e-filing.
yeah,
Then you click e-filing.
you tell me.
Again.
How's that?
Okay, and the first, there's 3 boxes in a row. The first one you hit is general. Second one, toward the middle, you hit intervention. The third one, you're going to hit doc list motion to intervene.
And this is all, if you look on the paper, it's step by step on there. So if you're a visual learner,
And there should be a next. Then you click next. And then you enter the docket number, which is CP, oh, it didn't pop in. CP 17-101-007.
and I'll make a note, the -007 is critically important. If you file under 6, you're not intervening under this docket. You will not have any say whatsoever in the legal proceedings, and there's rulings that have ruled people out. So just being in the 101 is not enough. 1001, not okay. 2, not okay. -007. I've seen a lot of things in my email coming through. People are just intervening in other old dockets. It doesn't, they're making a huge mistake. They're going to be cut out of any processes going forward.
And then you hit search, and you wait, and what pops in is a description of what Williams is asking for. And they're basically asking for oh, thanks. They're basically asking for FERC to reissue a permit that FERC has already vacated, which means it should have gone away. So that's what the description of this thing is. So you just click on the far right, the plus sign, there's a blue plus. And scroll down and hit next again. And then the document less intervention description, what you have to put in there is that you are, I'm assuming everybody here is opposed to the project, that you're opposed to FERC accepting this as a petition from Transco, and why you are opposed to it, which would be the harms to your neighborhood, the harms to your family, the harms to yourself, your health, climate, which FERC doesn't care about anymore, but you can put all those reasons in it. And we have samples that you can copy from. Anybody here who did not sign up the sign-in sheet, please make sure that you do so. We'll email you all these sample things that you can just copy and paste and adapt and make them personal. So after you, I'm gonna say that. So after you type in, where'd you go? Just type in blah, blah, blah.
I was going to show them where they get it.
I'm gonna show, yeah.
On the Franklin website, there's also a copy of the instructions, and there's sample text that you can use in your motion to intervene. And you can just copy and paste this, which explains all the necessary components to get you into the docket. So, for example, concerns for compressor station 206, you can copy it from the website and then paste it here. Okay?
Thanks. And then you just, after you do that, you click next. Then you click as an individual, you make that one light up. And then next. And then contact email, either yours should pop back in or you have to type it again. And then you click add as a signer, the first one. And then everything looks okay, you click next. And then you scroll down, there should be a submit. Where'd it go? Oh, next again.
If I do it, I'll submit it, but I already submitted it. I just confused the document.
Okay.
And that should be the last step.
But the last step is you click submit, and then it goes in. Yeah, but you don't want to do it again.
Okay, yeah. So then the last page is the submit.
Right. And then Ed was saying the Franklin Township website has, under committees and commissions, the task force, compressor station 206, and NESE, what do I have down? Register to become an intervener is on the left side, I think. And then, hang on a second. I can't see. Yeah, it describes who should be an intervener. Why doesn't it go down?
It's a, he gave you a tricky computer.
Yeah, the beginning part just describes what an intervener is,
And then the instructions.
and then register to become an intervener. You just click that, and there's instructions for registering. There's a FERConline.ferc.gov. Takes you right to that spot where you're supposed to fill in your name and email stuff.
Great. Is there a question? Yes.
Who had a question?
I just wanted to say that
I can't hear you without this. You want to come over? You want me to come here?
it's just a piece of information. If you saw the website, it says Township of Franklin, Somerset, New Jersey, because there's 5 Franklins in New Jersey. So you may, if you just put in Franklin, you may get Gloucester County or someplace else. So make sure it's Township of Franklin, Somerset.
Very good.
One other question, yeah.
I'll just project. So if you're doing this as an organization, how does it differ?
So the question is, if you're doing it as an organization, how does it differ? That one page where it says sign as an individual or sign as an organization, then you click sign as an organization and you list the organization name.
Okay, but like if you were already registered, how is it, when you do that at that, like, when you do that, in my own ad, email address would pop up, so I'm doing it as an organization. Will it self-populate?
So the question is, if you use your logon from an individual or that you set up previously, can you then file as an intervener on behalf of an organization?
No. No, you need a different email, one for your organization.
Yes,
And they'll ask you for the contact person for the organization.
so you can change that. You can change that information. Like you can change your email address in there.
Do both.
Sorry?
Do both. Register as an intervener, okay, as an individual.
But that field is not, you can change the field of your email address. That's my question.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Most organizations that I've seen have done it as a PDF, like they attach it.
Okay.
Like under e-filing, you can do it as a PDF.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be. I just saw somebody, it was like 3 sentences as an organization they did.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
If you are already an intervener from before, when you sign up to be an intervener again, you get a different ID number?
I did not. Did you get a different ID number? Oh. I didn't, what you have in FERC that has stayed there forever since, 2016, is your registration. So you can still use the old email and password, but just make sure that you put in CP 17101-007 to make sure that your time for intervening this time goes to that docket.
So if you've forgotten your ID number or your password or anything, just start all over again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't need your ID number to put your email.
Just to clarify, Barbara, I think you're saying an organization and an individual, they need to register separately, right? Separate times.
Right.
Yeah, organization and individual should register separately.
Register separately, and then it'll be whatever email you're on, that.
Well, my question was just like, if you register, if you intervene as an individual first, if that locks you into the email, or you could go in and change the email.
But you can do that at the beginning.
I would just do it anew. Put in a totally different email and totally different password. Questions? Yeah.
Clarification came through today. If you register as an organization, somebody in my own development can now walk with that. You need 2 people to sign on. Yeah,
You mean as an organization?
yeah, Dina.
She said that if you got,
Lux wants to register the JFK Democrats, and she got to the point where she had to register, and then she was not enough. There needs another signer from the organization.
You
oh,
need
she's
a
saying,
backup. You need
what
a
she's
backup.
saying is that she got notification that if you want to sign up
No, no,
as,
she couldn't get further. It
but if you want to sign up as an
required-
organization, you need 2 signers, is what you're saying.
Yes.
That could be, is anybody here?
She just.
Patty?
Is this on? You need someone from your organization who's willing to be it's a backup email. FERC asks for a backup email and a backup person in case you can't be reached. So you're still the person who's intervening on behalf of your organization. They just want a backup person in case you were to leave for another job or something.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Patty Kronheim from Rethink Energy to give us a little overview of the project itself, and then it'll be a little bit of the on-land and shore components, but really we'll hear more from Michelle about the devastation to the coastal region. So without further ado, Patty.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks everybody for coming out. I'm Patty Kronheim. I'm with Rethink Energy New Jersey, and we work to promote renewables and step away from fossil fuels. So, NESE, it was 2017 when I was first here talking to everybody about this project. How many of you were involved in the fight then? Show of hands. Great. And how many of you, this is the first time you've really heard about this project? Show of hands. Okay. So here's what you need to know. It was denied. NESE pipeline project was denied. It was denied by New York State and the state of New Jersey, which had the authority to grant the really important water permits that were needed for this permit, for this project. However, prior to that, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission had granted Williams Transco the certificate that it needed to be allowed on the federal level. And they had 2 years after that to get all their permits in line, which they did not. But they said, oh, we're going to keep trying. Then they got an extension for a year. They still did not get the permits. Finally, Williams Transco wrote to FERC and said, yes, we are not going to pursue anything anymore. And the certificate was vacated. So we all thought, game over. And that it should be the case. It is now no longer a live permit, a live certificate. So let me just back up a little and say New York State denied this because they said it was not going to be needed by New York State. They looked at all the studies that were done, including one by National Grid itself, which was the receiver of the gas, and they said it's not going to be needed and it would do too much harm to our waters. New Jersey said, New York says it's not needed, and without a compelling need, that doesn't meet our wetland rules, and we are also denying the permit. So that's where we were. What is Williams Transco trying to do now? Well, they're trying to do a rush job. They went back to FERC, and given the political environment, giving drill baby drill and executive orders and everything that we are faced with now in the United States, they went back to FERC and said, hey, can you just recertify us on that same old certificate? And do it quickly, okay? We're not going to update a lot of things. What you said last time, what we said it cost last time, yeah, that'll be what it is, sure. And there's not going to be any problems. Well, there's a lot of problems. The entire environment has changed. The costs, if we know anyone who's ever done construction anytime in the last few years, we know has changed way beyond just the rate of inflation. So what was a $1 billion project could be as high as a $2 billion project. Rushing it through and getting the old certificate renewed means they don't have to do a new environmental impact study, which is really the essential piece that looks at all of the impacts to the environment and the people that this pipeline would impact. So we really don't want this project to be rushed through. It is one of the major points when you intervene and write comments that we're asking everyone to say. But these costs, they'll burden New York ratepayers who are going to be, footing the bill for this project. Massive health costs to New Jerseyans, safety risks to New Jerseyans, and of course, long-term costs to our climate. So what is NESE? For those of you who it's their first time around, NESE is an expansion of the existing William Transco pipeline, which runs up the East Coast. And it allows for more frack gas to be able to come from the Marcellus Shale region, the Utica Shale region of Pennsylvania, into New Jersey and out through the Raritan Bay, under the Raritan Bay, and connecting in so that for gas delivery into downstate New York, which is the New York City area. It is a new compressor station proposed here in Franklin Township. It's 3.2 miles of new piping in Middlesex. It's a new gas compressor station unit in Old Bridge by the bay. It's an existing compressor station, but it's would be expanding it. It's 23 miles of pipeline across the Raritan Bay. And as I said, it has absolutely no benefit for New Jersey whatsoever. And the gas is not even needed in New York. So it has no benefit for anyone. So we did a lot of work on this project. Last time we started, we had to do a lot of studies. So I'm going to bring up to date on what we already know. We did need studies. The people in New Jersey, Eastern Environmental Law Center, we hired Synapse, and we did a study with them that looked at need. Is Williams Transco and National Grid, are they telling the truth? Is this really needed? And we also, our New York allies, hired the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, and they did a need study as well. And lo and behold, they found out the same thing. National Grid overestimated the need. There was no urgent need whatsoever. There were far better alternatives, including energy efficiency, demand response, carbon-free energy solutions such as geothermal and building electrification, which is the future that New York is planning and New Jersey is working towards as well. And all of these would be less expensive than the billion-dollar pipeline. So we know this isn't needed. And then, surprisingly, National Grid created the person who is buying the gas and was working with Williams Transco on this project. They came out with a supplemental capacity report for Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and Long Island. And they said that there are cheaper alternatives that would bridge the demand-supply gap that they said there was. Now, our study said there was no real supply-demand gap, that everything was okay, but they even came up with alternatives themselves. So that's why New York State was able to say, there's no need. They looked at our studies, and they read what National Grid themselves said. Now, this time around, National Grid has said they're going to come out with a new long-term report. And we wouldn't be surprised if they said they needed it now. But this is the same company that started cutting off people's gas in New York and said, oh, we can't possibly, supply people with gas. And then Governor Cuomo fined them about $37 million and made them turn the gas back on. And lo and behold, the gas is still on. And the sky has not fallen. So there have been many, many, many more building electrification projects in New York City, and that is the direction they're moving. So demand is definitely going in the direction away from natural gas, not towards it, natural gas. So we also did a water study. Princeton Hydro we hired, and they looked at offshore and onshore winds. Michelle's going to talk about offshore risks from contaminated sediments being churned up. And onshore, they were able to show, our studies were able to show the damage to the coastal wetlands, all the exceptional resource areas, and of course around Compressor Station 206, what a bad selection that was for a site, and how that did not meet New Jersey's rules. So we already had that study done as well. We did air studies. And all of these studies are available, and we'll be building out local websites, and as this comment periods go on, and when you're an intervener, there'll be more opportunities to comment. You can resource these and read them for yourselves. But Exhibit B, the air study that we had done, looked at all the different volatile organic compounds, fine particulate matter, and nitrogen dioxide that would be emitted by the compressor station and the construction of it as well. And this is already an ozone non-attainment area, so you already have air quality issues. If anybody ever pulls up your weather app and you scroll down to see is it a good air day, fair, poor, the last thing you need is more emissions coming into your community. And originally they were able to not submit for an air permit. Williams Transco didn't have to submit for an air permit. They used, mistakenly, the old thresholds for having to report. Well, those thresholds are, since 2018, are tighter, so they have had to now apply for an air permit. But that doesn't mean that they won't get it. It just means that now they have to apply and show how it has impact. So you should be asking for how, when you comments, you should be saying that you want a health study. You want to know how these contaminants will impact the health of New Jerseyans.
We know these facilities release chemicals like benzene, which cause leukemia. The question is, are they releasing enough to increase the risk of childhood cancer? And in some cases, it seems as though that may be the case. I'm Kurt Nordgaard. I'm a pediatrician, and I work at a community health center in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. If people knew what I know about natural gas, we would all be moving away from natural gas as quickly as possible. There is actually an overlap between pipelines and human health, and a lot of that has to do with compressor stations. Compressor stations do release a significant amount of air pollution, and it affects all sorts of health outcomes like asthma, but even health conditions that we now know are related to air pollution, things like diabetes. There are several studies which have measured the pollution around compressor stations and have found elevated concentrations of formaldehyde, which is toxic and associated with cancer, elevated concentrations of particulate matter, and elevated concentrations of hazardous air pollutants. There are worst-case scenarios in terms of both health and safety. Compressor stations do explode, and the impact of those explosions, it's dramatic. But even beyond that, there are health topics, health issues that simply have not been addressed in any fashion. Now that we build these facilities closer and closer to people, this is a growing problem. My greatest concern is when I look at communities like Minisink, New York, where up to 2/3 of residents living within a mile of that compressor station are reporting respiratory symptoms and nosebleeds. And so with children, one of the greatest concerns is asthma. There's indirect evidence that there are heavy metals in natural gas. If children are exposed to those heavy metals, it affects their development. And for the elderly, the major air pollutants that come from burning any fossil fuel, including gas, are increasing their risk of heart attacks and stroke and respiratory disease. The least harmful pollution is the pollution that's never there to begin with. We need to go directly to renewable energy. We need to really push energy efficiency so that we can get rid of the need for more pipelines in the first place. So the most important thing is to become involved with these issues. And it is challenging to stop a project like a compressor station, but it is possible. It has happened. We can find a better way.
And that was Dr. Kurt Nordgaard. He came and did a presentation back in 2017 for us. And, I always like to play his because he says it best. So where does it go in our community? This is just one example of a plume. It was done using NOAA modeling. Remember NOAA? And they do good work. And this is where when the winds are coming from a certain direction, just about how far in the density, it shows the closer you are, the more dense the pollutants are, where it would go in your communities. These are other scenarios. And the problem with the way that these things are recorded is that they always use what the average is. But human beings don't experience pollution on average. They experience it as peak exposure. And this just gives you a sort of a sense of how high it can be on a peak exposure moment. And that's what you're breathing. And then, your body will feel that. That's what you're impacted by, the peak exposure, not an average. We don't live in averages. And around the Franklin area, all these little green dots are all of the schools that are within 2 miles of the Williams Transco pipeline. And I want to point out that about 10 miles away, farther south on the line, is compressor station 205 in Princeton. There's already a compressor station there. Usually compressor stations are about 50 miles apart. These are about 10 miles apart. So there's 2 compressor stations. So this impacts the people in Princeton and that area as well as does you. It's a lot of compression for a very small area. And these are just a list of the schools near NESE and their distance from pipeline. And this just sort of shows the pipeline overdevelopment. Then you can see those little purple triangles that go up the line, bump, bump, bump. That's the existing compressor stations and the proposed compressor station. And all of that extra gas flowing with higher velocity, higher pressures, that puts more of a strain on aging pipes. And these are 75-year-old pipes, a lot of them in the Williams Transco system, and that increases risk. Which brings us to the next exhibit, which was Exhibit C, which was the safety exhibit done by Accufax. And he found in doing this study that there would be significant impacts to public safety. And the alarming part is that public safety is not part of the FERC review process. The Pipeline Hazardous Material and Safety Administration, which is the federal agency responsible for the safety of existing pipelines, only works to monitor existing pipelines. They only come into the picture once a pipeline is operational, not before. So siting is not a PHMSA issue. It's just safety is not considered. So because this particular pipeline is going through aging Transco pipe, so much of it, and because it is next to an active explosive blasting quarry, that is something that you all should be writing. That we demand a safety analysis, that that the Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety Administration, PHMSA, get involved in the analysis of whether this pipeline should get a certificate. And these are just some of the risks that our studies showed. There were vintage welds, and Transco wouldn't say how old the welds on the old pipes were, and what are the limits of the increased speed of the gas going through it. There were just a lot of unanswered questions that Williams Transco did not provide. And this is a graph that just shows what's happened with pipeline accidents since the Marcellus shale boom. There were a lot of accidents of pipelines that are built a long time ago. This is called the bathtub curve. So sort of when a pipeline and compressor stations are first put into service, they're at a higher risk of failure. And then as they get older, they're at a higher risk of failure. Well, we're kind of in the sweet spot here of new infrastructure and higher risk of failure. And the very last column on the right is one I added today that can show what the 2020s are like. And I'm sorry to say that they haven't gotten better than the 2010s in terms of pipeline incidents. And incidents are only recorded when there are like over $120,000 worth of damage or there's injury or fatality. These aren't just like, minor incidents. And these sort of just shows the impact zones of what the pipeline is. So the closer you are, basically, the more risk you are if there were an incident. And if you're within a quarter mile of the Williams Transco pipeline or compressor station when there is an incident, you would be experiencing severe burns. So what do? We take action. We beat this thing once before. We can do it again. So we have to ask when you intervene and send a comment. There are 3 things you're going to ask for sure, among all the other things you might want to add, and your personal story as well, you can add that too. Extend the comment period by 90 days. This rush job is not working, and it's not fair, and it's not appropriate. The certificate was vacated. Require a completely new application from Williams Transco. They shouldn't just be able to ride on the coattails of their own old vacated certificate. And thirdly, require a new environmental impact study, which would include new costs for what the projects are, analysis on need, safety, and a health analysis, because they did not provide some of those before. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Michelle.
So if I can, I'm going to do a quick introduction for Michelle. First, I want to acknowledge Mayor Phil Kramer, who's here. I gave him a chance to say anything. He declined at the time. Maybe he'll have some comments at the end, but we appreciate all your work. Michelle joins us, Michelle Langa from New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. She previously was a legal intern for both organizations, working with the Hackensack Riverkeeper as well, and a frequent volunteer with the Hackensack Riverkeeper's paddling events. She graduated from Roger Williams University Law School, where she focused on environmental and public interest law. She's also a graduate of John Jay College for Criminal Justice and Montclair State University, where she studied criminal law and procedural and English literature, respectively. Born and raised in Bergen County, here in New Jersey, she gained a love and appreciation for the ocean with yearly trips to Florida's Atlantic coast, where she developed her love for the ocean life and preserving and protecting our oceans and our natural habitats. So when she's not working to protect the environment, she enjoys scuba, also very ocean-oriented, if you didn't notice, reading, and all things geek, like movies, TV, comics, and video games. And Doctor Who, evidently. So thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. So this NESE was one of the first projects I started working with when I started in my official position at Baykeeper Riverkeeper back in 2017. I didn't think we would be talking about it again in 2025, but here we go. So I'm going to run through some of the primary impacts of the project on the Bay. These are by no means an exhaustive list. It's just some of the main issues that we ran into when we first reviewed the draft and final environmental impact statements, both of which were severely lacking in detail and information and concrete answers to how they would mitigate some of the issues that we're going to talk about. Essentially, they consider the temporary impact of the construction of the pipeline to be the only thing that they really needed to address. But in reality, that temporary impact is going to have long-lasting reverberations to the entire community of humans, wildlife, and water, connected. So we've all seen, I think, the map. So water quality is one of the first things that comes up. The map that I've included on this slide is actually from the EPA, when they actually were something we could look up to. The yellow sites on this are Superfund, and this is just the Bayshore region. And so because of these Superfund sites, some of which are on the shore or connected to it, the impacts have flowed into the water. Some of you may have been familiar with the National Lead Slag site off of Lawrence Harbor, where they literally built walls with lead in the water and are working now to remove that. All of these are in the neighborhood of where the pipeline would cross from New Jersey to New York. And in addition to that, just the sort of impact of our water quality in the Bay, good as it is limited at best. And so by dredging for 23 miles, everything that gets dredged up gets blown up into imagine a sort of a cloud of dust and dirt underwater that will then resettle. And so that's going to just sort of affect every single thing that touches it within that plume. Excuse me. And so tightly connected to that is shellfish habitat, or what we would call benthic habitat. So those are basically the things that live in the dirt. And the map that I've included here illustrates the red and brown. The red is restricted, the brown is restricted, the red is prohibited areas for shellfish growing for use. And so that is a significant portion of where this pipeline would flow through. So if it's not safe enough to have a shellfishing industry in this water because of water quality concerns, imagine what that will do once it's spread beyond these regions. And then just to sort of take it back to how bad the EIS was, per the EIS, the recovery time was 1 to 3 years post construction. Yet the studies that predicted that recovery were all 6 or more years old at the time of that study, or I'm sorry, at the time of that EIS in 2017, maybe 2016 at the end. And they all predate the installation of the New York Bay Lateral project, which occurred in 2015. So they did not even include the impacts that that project had on what the Bayshore would face with this second project so soon after. Oh, sorry. I should have included a slide on that. So we're taking it back even further to 2015, where Transco added a secondary pipeline across the bay to the Rockaways, I believe, to added supply to New York City. And so that happened in 2015. None of that was included in the EIS or in their calculations for how the bay would react, respond, or recover to the NESE project. Yeah. And so, you know, the things that make our bay great are the wildlife that is so well supported by the marine environment. If any of you spend any time out near Sandy Hook, you'll see things like seals hanging out. If you're out in the bay at any given time, you might see turtles, we've had right whales, minke whales. There's a few other species that pass by through the migratory patterns. Several of these are endangered. So basically, roughly 3 species of seal, 13 species of marine mammal, including whales, several species of shellfish, say that 7 times fast, horseshoe crabs, Atlantic bluefin tuna, dusky and sand tiger sharks, my favorite, and 5 species of sea turtle, which are a lot of fun. And all of these animals, and including the Atlantic sturgeon, which is that little baby on the right-hand side there, an endangered species. Now, everything in the food chain relies on the health and benefits it gets from the benthic population. It feeds up the chain. And so even things like the whales who might come here because of, you know, great bait fish that they eat during their migration, those fish survive off of something that they're getting from further down the food chain. And so disrupting that benthic habitat will have that ripple effect up the food chain and even into shorebirds and other marine bird species. And so just to kind of put this in context, the rough estimates were 14,000 acres of surface area would be impacted during construction. And of that, I wrote down, sorry. I might have it on the next slide, but it's roughly 2,500 mile radius, or sorry, foot radius. Yeah, there it is. So in addition to what we have living in the, excuse me, the seafloor of the bay, we also have a very active recreational and fishing communities that transverse in and out of the bay at any given time during different seasons. So this would essentially, in multiple ways, decimate both of those industries in varying ways over the next several years to who knows how long, if assuming the populations within the water are actually able to recover well. If they can't and they move on somewhere else, we might see decades before we have a real recovery. And that's the danger of the backslide that this could produce in the health and well-being of our natural resources. So essentially, the sort of green economy of ecotourism that we all enjoy. I know Patty likes to surf. I like to dive. The New York Bight, which is part of the region, is a very healthy and booming economy for fisher people, for boaters, both power and manual. And so having that 14,000 acre area interrupted for 9 months at a time can really cripple people fishing. It can really cripple sort of small recreational boating abilities. Not to mention the fact that whatever populations are harmed in the physical construction of the pipeline being laid down may or may not fully recover or take 5, 10, 15 years to recover. So I know I've kind of gone over a lot of information very quickly. Like I said, it wasn't an exhaustive list. We also have wetlands that within their EIS they mentioned losing or mitigating. There was no clear plan for how that might happen. And so when you lose wetlands, you also lose what we would call natural shoreline protection. It tends to be a breeding ground for animals, birds and fish and others. So when you lose that, you lose those species' health and vitality. You lose the impact that you get from carbon sequestration within wetlands. You lose the impact of storm surge protection, which I know many of you are familiar with the issues during Sandy. Having natural resiliency built into shoreline and offshore is one of the best ways that we can protect ourselves from storm surges. In addition to the on-land work that we do to green infrastructure and reduce impervious surface and so on. So please feel free to come up to me afterwards and ask any questions if I missed anything that you have concerns about. I'm sure that if we can get them to do a full EIS again, we'll at least be able to get some updated information on what they intend to sort of impact through their process, and we can battle that back with our reviews of it. So thank you all for being here tonight and hearing this out.
Thank you, thank you. So I have a couple questions before we get, I see some hands, which is great, so think about your questions. So one thing that sort of stood out in all of this was the National Grid did a study of their own when they were sort of, I don't know, like in and out, like a binary system on this stuff. And they did what they called a no-build option, meaning they wouldn't have to invest billions of dollars in a pipeline and compressor station that would put New Jersey families at risk and ratepayers that are already paying a lot for their energy in New York on the hook for the infrastructure, which would obviously be cheaper and better. Can you talk more about what that no-build option is to still get the same gas there through existing infrastructure?
Sure. National Grid, they call them NPAs, non-pipeline alternatives. And they, they realized, maybe they saw the writing on the wall or whatever, but they did a supplementary report. And they showed all different kinds of alternatives. So some of the alternatives, they overestimated what the gas demand would be. Because this demand, you're building $1 billion pipeline for a small amount of peak day demand that would require 0 degrees for over 24 hours. It was recorded at Central Park. Now, we don't get a lot of 0 degree days. And even then, it has to be over 24 hours. And even then, people aren't going to go without gas. It just strains the system. It was not needed. So they looked at other things. They looked at, well, what if we do more energy efficiency programs with people and people use less gas? Great idea, right? What if we do have demand response so that the way people's thermostats and things work are better? What if we do more geothermal? What if we support more building electrification? These were the type of alternatives. They also had gas alternatives as well, that were listed. There were injection sites where they could have trucked liquid natural gas brought in, and they could inject gas into certain sites and parts of the system. But they haven't had to do that. They haven't needed to use those sites. So it's really, the future really is about getting our buildings off of natural gas, which is cleaner and healthier for everyone. Buildings are, in New Jersey, the second highest cause of carbon dioxide. When you burn gas, it produces carbon dioxide. And when you combine that with the leaked gas that these pipelines emit with methane, methane is 80% more potent greenhouse gas in the first 20 years when it's leaked. So New York has got plans and legislation to move towards building electrification. It's not part of their climate plans. It's not part of New Jersey's climate plans to double down on fossil fuels. This is really a battle between the fossil fuel industry and those who, and clean energy. So that's what we're really standing up for. The solutions are there. We can do this. We can do this right. And it's going to be up to the DEP, and it's going to be up to the Department Environmental Commission, Conservation in New York, to stand up to this federal administration, to stand up to Donald Trump and his fossil fuel cronies and say, no, we have authority as states to say no to these permits if they are bad for our states, if we see these projects are unneeded, and we see that they will create irreparable harms to our water, to our air, to our environment, to the people's health who live here. So that's what we're asking. We're asking the states to stand up to and assert their authority.
Thank you for that. There was a question, someone put their hand up, so I was going to bring the mic around. Anyone have a question? I keep coming up with ones. We'll go here and then over there in order.
What is the likelihood that New York will approve this?
Well, we all heard and read in the paper probably that Trump, who has been very anti-offshore wind, and wind is a solution, not a problem. I want to state that they say he made a deal. He says he made a deal. If you give me the pipeline, I'll give you Empire Wind. Well, and then Governor Hochul's response was, well, we guarantee that we will give it a fair look. And that's as far as she has said publicly. We don't know what happened behind closed doors. We are hopeful that between us and our New York allies and the truth, that they will reject the pipeline and see that it is still unneeded, probably even more so because of the strides towards building electrification that have been going on in New York. But we don't know.
Michelle, did you want to take a gamble on that? Some roulette sort of odds?
Yeah, I think that once we have the facts in front of the state, we have a really good argument against this pipeline. The Bay impact, I think, is more specifically on the New York side. New Jersey is going to be the ones weighing in on the compression station. And so that will be a separate but equal battle at the New Jersey side. But again, the facts behind it, I think, really don't justify the installation or the expansion of this pipeline project at all. There's just no need for it, and the harm that will come outweighs there is no benefit.
No, thank you for that. I find it hard to believe that something that was already denied would be denied again, would be approved in the future. It doesn't make sense to me unless you're playing politics with people's health, their welfare, and our future generations, our children and grandchildren, what they're going to inherit. And so I think any politician that changes on a dime or flip-flops is going to be siding with a corrupt administration that's trying to line the pockets of their donors. Williams Transco has donated tens of thousands of dollars to re-elect Donald Trump so that the ratepayers in New York could fund this project with an unknown price tag. They're using old numbers, as Patty mentioned, and damage our lives and our health forever. And that's what's happening here. So I think all of us need to communicate that message as well, that we insist that our elected officials do their job to protect the public who elected them, not the donors who funded one individual's campaign. So we have another question here too.
So my question is, given what has happened in California and undoing the regulations when it came to going to electric cars by, I think it was 2026, the federal government basically stepped on the state's rights in that case. What impact would that have, even if we stand together as a united state and with New York and New Jersey? Can the federal government just basically usurp that again, what they did in California, and this would be all for naught?
Well, California would say they couldn't do it legally, and they're challenging it, right? And there was a recent decision last year against the regional energy access project. Had the district court in D.C. said to FERC, you cannot just take, a developer's word for what need is. You also have to look at what are states' clean energy plans, and you need to respect that. So there is precedent for that. It is, to put it technically, I'm not a lawyer, I think it's a legal hot mess, And, but we know if the courts do their job, they will uphold the state's rights.
I agree completely with that too. And I would say right now, while we're sitting here talking about this, I don't know what'll happen, this is being recorded, but there's a big ugly bill moving through Congress that's looking to change a lot of things. Unfund health care for veterans, families that are the most in need of protections are being eviscerated for health care that they can access. Everything we're seeing are all distractions from something that's happening there, thinking that we can't walk and chew gum. And I know this community, and I know we can walk and chew gum. We can defend our neighbors against the attacks coming out of Washington from this administration and from the corporate polluters that are also trying to do that at the same time. And just because somebody does something, and particularly this president, who's been found to many times violate court orders, including the Supreme Court in returning someone they administratively improperly deported, we trust the legal system to play out, and I think we have to watch that. Just because something happens in a headline doesn't mean that's how it sticks. And I think that has a nickname. It starts with a T around that from Wall Street on that one. So.
I have a comment and a question. First of all, I think we need to coordinate really closely with our New York friends, because we need to make sure that they are watching the whole process in New York very carefully and ready to go to court at a moment's notice, because delay is on our side. We have a president in place only for a few years, and we are looking at the long term. And the facts are on our side. So I think that's a big issue right there. I also wanted to ask about the right whale. Maybe Michelle can make a comment on that. It's highly endangered, and it's something of great concern to a lot of people. We've had a lot of people hold up on wind because they're worried about the whales. They don't know much about it, but they're worried about the whales.
I can comment on that, and I think Michelle will be better positioned, but a lot of people don't also know the facts. The right whale is one of the most endangered species of whales. It's called the right whale for a reason. It was the right whale to catch. It was the most buoyant, the easiest to slaughter at sea, and they were harvested for lighting our homes, simply. And they're trying to rebound in a population, and they do make their way off the Jersey coast. The number one killer of marine mammals, whales included, is really fast boats. And the fishing industry particularly has been very opposed to slowing down those boats. And the shipping industry also very opposed to slowing down the boats. And that's the number one killer, ship strikes. And in all the cases when determination could be made, that's what it was. And then another big killer is filling their bellies with plastic pollution, abandoned fishing gear that just makes its way through. And then the third largest killer is climate change itself, which is changing the ecosystem, and whales are starving because the food they depend on aren't in the places they need to be so they can eat them. And because of the rising temperatures of our ocean, and with that, the climate attacks that we're seeing from more frequent and intense storms, it's all interrelated. And the source of that is man-made climate pollution from burning compressed gas through compressor stations and pipelines that are killing whales. And offshore wind is a way not only to save our own lives from that pollution, but to save those very marine mammals. And those folks are 100% misinformed and tried to connect two dissonant things that were happening at the same time and try to win an argument with it. But all the science is 100% on the best protection for the ocean. And don't take it just from me. I'm executive director as well with New Jersey LCV. Take it from Greenpeace, who joined us in solidarity in support of moving away from fossil fuels to build the turbines to save our planet and marine mammals from the devastation that they're seeing. And let's also address the other pieces. Slow down the boats, get rid of ghost nets and gear. And if I took all your thunder, I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about it. So how I got my start.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. The number one threat to large mammals in our waters are boat strikes. And we've seen that over the last few years with the creatures that we've lost and done necropsies on to confirm that sad fact. But the other, key is in the last 20 or so years, collectively, we have made some really beautiful progress in restoring habitat and seeing species resurge in our waters. And projects like this put us so far back that the recovery time becomes exponential. And we just don't have that time anymore. We are at that point in history and in human history where if we don't do something now to stop that backsliding, we're never going to recover from it. And so I think, it's projects like this that just have to stop, and we have to look towards Europe and how they've addressed fossil fuel resilience, reductions, all of those things. Just to kind of jump back a second about the sort of the directives coming out of Washington, I think one of the most important things to remember is that an executive order is not law. And so this ridiculous bill is most important right now because it will become law if they approve it. And that is the threat. A lot of the actors in the fossil fuel industry are acting on what their friend in Washington is telling them is okay now. But technically it is not yet. And so we still have that on our side, I think, for some time now to battle back against this. And just keep that in mind. Don't lose heart against the fight, because we do still have law and facts on our side.
I just want to respond also to the New York. We are in close contact with our New York allies, Surf Riders, Sane Energy, National Resource Defense Council. They are following everything there on the ground, and we are in close communication with them 100%.
So Barbara agreed to help folks if they want to intervene tonight. So raise your hand if you're interested in doing that so we can make sure we leave enough time. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 folks or so. We have 3 computers, so a few of us can help. Okay, awesome. Maybe a couple final questions from folks who haven't asked yet, and then we'll come to if we get some more. Okay.
Yes, thank you for this, very informative. I was not here the first round because I was not a resident of Franklin Township. So obviously the action plan the first time was successful because the pipeline was rejected. And my question is it too soon to ask what is there a plan of action for this time and to what extent the political realities of today differ from the first time around, and how we plan to overcome the challenge, because in my personal view, the only time that we as the people manage to change something is if we mobilize as large a number of people as possible. And so my question is, how do we mobilize a large number of Franklin residents? Thank you.
Not just Franklin too, but Linda said too, across the entire route and the whole state. I mean, everyone's negatively impacted, and New Yorkers would pay tons of money.
I would just say, first of all, we're starting and we're doing it. The one thing that was heartening about this project is we do have a coalition of a lot of different environmental groups and pipeline fighters. I mean, look around, a lot of people in this room. I see, Linda and Carol and Bernadette and Barbara. I mean, these are folks who fought really hard the first time, and it's just, and Elizabeth, and we were in the first Zoom call, and everybody was there. People, it took like a couple of years to pull everyone together, all these groups, and the New York people, they're all on a Zoom call ready to go. And we know what we have to do. We're getting different towns to pass resolutions on the Bay and along the coast, and in this area as well, talking to candidates, talking to the governor's office, talking to our legislators, already working on this. So everybody is already working and coordinated. We've got, Mayor Phil on board that Franklin just passed a resolution. All of you are here. You all can be advocates, spread this word, share this story, get your friends involved. If you've got people involved in the Indivisible movement and in other political movements and groups, the Garden Club, anything, pull them in, because this is a moment in history where New Jersey is under environmental attack by an administration that has its thumb on the scale for the fossil fuel industry in a way that I've never seen as blatantly in my lifetime as I'm seeing now. So can we beat this? Yes, we can, and it's going to be up to the states. The bill that's going through is a very big, bad, ugly bill. It has a provision in it that would, if it's passed, would allow developers of projects like this to pay an extra fee and be able to skirt around any kind of judicial review. So the developers know how powerful we are, and we have to continue being powerful. We can't back down at all. This is the fight. We are fighting for our health. We're fighting for our lives and for our children's lives and our children's future, as well as all the wonderful animals in the Bay. So keep fighting, and you are the solution right here.
And if you have suggestions about things that we should be doing to help get the word out, definitely let us know. We're open for that as well.
Yeah, I just want to build up with that. I know Franklin Township passed a township resolution opposing the construction. South Brunswick, the three of us are from South Brunswick, is voting on the same resolution tomorrow at 6 p.m. So even if you're not a resident of South Brunswick, I'm a member of the Environmental Commission there, so I'll be speaking. So encourage folks to come to the municipal building. These resolutions are symbolic, obviously, in nature, but they're important because they go to local elected officials and the governor's office as well. So it shows strong local opposition. So it is really important still to get these township resolutions passed.
Thank you for everything you're doing to help make that happen.
I'd take it one step further. They're not just symbolic, though, because I remember last time we did this, Trump was also president, and everyone thought it was total despair and we never could accomplish anything. But by working together and in numbers, there is strength. We had hundreds of people intervene and thousands of people comment, and the press took notice of that and said, why are so many people opposed to this? Well, this is not the middle of nowhere. It's New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the nation, where we have more people per square mile than anywhere else in the country, more impervious coverage, more schools, you saw the dots. Everything is just right there. And so, yeah, one project is going to impact thousands of people. And those are the people who took time to go through an archaic process of months, buttons and screens and hiding things. On purpose, they're making it tough. They could have one screen with all that info, right? But they don't. They leave it so you could mess up. They want you, in my opinion, to file under the wrong file, 006 or 3 instead of 7, and cut you out of the process. So we're very powerful, and it's beyond symbolism. It's what led to success, but we have to continue to keep each other lifted up in what feels like kind of, you know, banging our head against the wall every single day. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful.
No, I agree. Thank you for adding that. The other thing is that we are in state election year. So definitely go to all these meet and greets, the governor's race, the assembly races, and you know, really bring this up to their faces and you know, push them to come out against this.
Awesome. There was something else on the side. Anyone? Okay, over here.
Or force them to say they're for it.
Right. So I fought this before, but I can't remember exactly where the compressor is going to be. Can you help place where it is?
So if you've ever seen the largest Buddha in America, right next door. So it's towards us where we are now, down 27, just next door to the largest Buddha on the right. So as, well, sort of behind it to the right, yeah. I don't know if, Patty, if you have the map, it might help.
I think Carol would be the best suited to give directions because it's behind her, it would be behind her house.
But it's a good description?
Map.
Good, we get a description from an expert.
If you're familiar with Route 27 and the intersection with Route 518, the compressor station would be kind of midway between 27 and 518 in the woods, behind the Buddhist property, my property, behind Higgins Farm and the Superfund site, and next to Trap Rock, in a very heavily wooded area. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
The largest Buddha in America is a good landmark. All right, one last question. Yeah, so we're going to get a copy of the slides. We're going to get a copy of the handouts available as well. And the most important thing right now is that folks are intervening, because you have until a week from today, 5 p.m. on the 24th, and then also submitting comments, which are due also a week from today by 5 p.m., the 24th of June. We're asking for an extension. It's possible they'll grant it, but not probable. And of course, we're also asking for the list that Patty had lined up. Start back from the beginning. Make sure you do a thorough review. It should not go under expedited review under the president's executive order, but also resurrect a zombie project and whole, permit structure from before. You can't have it both ways. You can't be new and also the old. And you canceled your application previously because they failed to do anything or meet any of the obligations. So they're trying to have everything and take it all. And we think they should start all over again and include in that the public process and the conversations.
If you don't...
Oh, you don't need mic. What you do for camera?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ed, you're absolutely right. Thank you for saying that, because I was formulating the way of doing that. So it is not the same application. I've been going through the construction air emissions that they submitted to FERC in response to FERC's request. It's a completely new data set. The modeling, the emission factors, everything has changed. And they submit also the information in drips and drabs. In other words, there's another one, response to FERC's initial data request, which came in a couple of days after the first one. And I have to calm down when I go home and write a polite and firm rebuke of that, because it's yet another data set. Two quick things. You gotta hit them with the facts. They don't care about Michelle's beautiful Baykeeper project, about Patty's and Barbara's sharp legal minds. They don't care about the enthusiasm of the people and the anger of the people. They care about mammon, money. And also, because this is the year when former representative from Long Island, Lee Zeldin, became the EPA administrator, A lot of things at the EPA have gone by the wayside. I should know, I worked for Region 2 for 23 years. So be careful when you rely on EPA to review and help you with this. Thank you.
And I just want to just build on that.
Thank you.
Because they keep submitting. And for me, this is the 6th pipeline fight that I've done in the state of New Jersey. And what I've learned is that you intervene on time and you comment, but you don't stop commenting. You keep commenting, and FERC actually does see those comments. They may not do anything about it, but they see them. And those comments, we see them. And if you send in new information, there are lawyers that we use. It's helpful, but you can keep commenting, especially if FERC submits new information. After a comment period, you can submit comments. And I've talked with people at FERC over the years, and they said, yeah, we've never, told people they couldn't comment or we couldn't see it, because it does happen more rolling. These comments happen on a more rolling basis than they say in the brochure. So you just can keep commenting, but make sure you intervene and do that first comment on time, so you preserve any legal rights. But then keep writing.
Hello. So, first of all, I also like Doctor Who.
Cool.
I did a little calculation because I'm an engineer and I go nerd on these things. I wanted to know how much pollution this compressor station was going to put out. And as one of you said, buildings create pollution. Imagine 7,000 new homes, all powered by natural gas. That's the amount of gas that this will burn. That's the amount of pollution this will put out. Just to put that in context, there are 22,000 homes in all of Franklin. So this is a third of the homes in all of Franklin putting out pollution, rather than spread out over 48 square miles, all coming from one spot. That's a lot of pollution. We have to stop it.
Thanks, Mayor Phil, for everything you do. I was going to say also, someone once described it as like if you were running, I don't know how many hundred cars in a parking lot in one spot continuously, just running hundreds of cars in a parking lot.
All right, Linda Powell gets a last comment.
Yeah, this is just to say to people, there's a sign-up sheet at the back if you're not already on the email list, and a lot of you don't look familiar to me from 9 years ago. Please print clearly, because we got some old eyes that are going to be looking at it, including mine. And if you want to be in touch, we will send out emails so you know, and it'll either be Franklin Task Force or Central Jersey Environmental Defenders or other coalition that you'll get it from.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Patty and Michelle for your tremendous presentations. I hope we'll see you again. And if you're interested in the 3 laptops that are set up in the back, only I can get online with 2 of them. Barbara, and there's a few of others of us that can help you get set up. Okay? Thanks so much.